It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am Tyler Hapney, your game master and host. I have been conferred with, and people have, of course, informed me that by this point, I have probably run about 200 sessions of Cyberpunk Red alone, so my intro should probably change from here on. I have run quite a few games of Dungeons & Dragons and Cyberpunk Red. I'm still running them weekly, so as these podcasts are releasing, I've basically ran a session for each one. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, this podcast is a way for me to consolidate my thoughts on both of those systems, Dungeons & Dragons and Cyberpunk Red. I am here today to discuss another D&D campaign, and we are going to be returning to a setting I talked about quite a few episodes ago, just a little bit ways back. I want to talk about Sigil again, I know. But primarily, I think we're actually going to be talking a bit about what's going on around Sigil, the Outlands. But we're going to be doing that through the lens of talking about one of the newer D&D campaigns. And I say newer relatively. This came out like a few years ago by this point. It's still 5e. We haven't gotten any 5.5e campaigns. But yes, I'm here to talk about Turn of Fortune's Wheel. Which is a campaign that takes place partly in Sigil, mostly outside. There's a few parts in Sigil. The beginning of the campaign particularly begins in Sigil, and I believe the end also happens there as well. However, there is a big, meaty center portion where you're spending time outside of Sigil in the lands that surround. So we're going to talk a bit about that campaign today and use that as a way to also discuss the Outlands. So, first things first, let's talk about Turn of Fortune's Wheel. What is this campaign? Well, this campaign exists, as I read it, as a sort of tribute to Planescape Torment. More than anything. It really seems like they're building a lot of the sort of themes and little jokes and kind of in nods, at least in the first bit of the campaign, towards Planescape fans, which is cool. Literally, the first character you meet is Mort from Planescape Torment. He's this floating talking skull guy that speaks in a New Jersey accent. Can't get better than that. Cool guy, but Mort's there, and basically even the intro to Planescape Torment is sort of replicated in Turn of Fortune's Wheel, because the campaign starts in, I gotta admit, probably one of the more interesting ways to start a campaign. The group, or whatever, your player characters, all wake up in the mortuary because they were dead. Apparently they died, but the universe doesn't know what to do with them. They don't know this, obviously. They just kind of start out not knowing what happened. Maybe their character just died in whatever plane they were from originally, and then they were transported here now to Sigil, and they're just sort of living again. Either way, they escape from the mortuary, which is just a death trap, by the way. And during that time, they manage to, hopefully, somebody bites the dust. All right, like it's this kind of campaign. And one thing that's special about Turn of Fortune's Wheel, and I think what really makes this campaign stand out among the rest, is player death is different in Turn of Fortune's Wheel. See, the whole concept is that death doesn't know what to do with the players. They're caught in a sort of glitch, if that makes sense. So when they die, it doesn't know where to put their souls, so it puts them right back into Sigil. And so maybe like 5 minutes later, after they die, they'll show back up again, maybe just nearby, and they might have something different about them. Like maybe they grew a mustache, or their eyes are a different color, or they might even be like a completely different gender or something like that. The ways of the planes are strange. It's strange how that all works. But what is important is it's I think it's a really crucial for players to discover that little fact pretty early on into the campaign, because it really opens up a lot of opportunities for player sort of expression if they know that they can die, in quotes, but not really. Which obviously not every campaign is going to need something like that. All right. Like this is obviously a really cool gimmick for one campaign. I don't know about running it for every D&D campaign, something like that. But for this one, very cool. For Planescape, it makes sense. It's super cool. I mean, I don't know about makes sense, but you get what I'm saying. So anyways, that's kind of the sort of the setup to the campaign, at least for the beginning part. The actual meat and potatoes of the campaign involves talking to this figure, Shemeshka, who's been around for a while. She's a character that people have known about in Planescape for years, but now she's actually taking sort of a front stage in the sort of Sigil Planescape and this political atmosphere, where she is basically trying to do something within Sigil. And the basic gist of it is she sends the players on a wild goose chase. And that's like most of the campaign, is this chase for this thing that really in the end doesn't necessarily matter. And it really is only to get the players away from Shemeshka while she's doing her big bad evil guy stuff. Which I found kind of a flat point of the campaign, but whatever. Honestly, the campaign is mostly seems to be about enjoying the setting of Outlands in general, and what a setting it is. So Outlands is where the players will go to after they meet Shemeshka, and Shemeshka basically sends them off on this crazy goose chase to go find this single Modron that's somewhere out in the Outlands. And that's kind of that's the setup. And the Outlands itself is a large, infinitely long plane that is full of crazy stuff like walking castles and floating towns and basically anything you could really conceive of. The Outlands has it. It's said that the Outlands is really hard to picture because it's ever changing. Different people might perceive it differently. Which at the end of the day is kind of a cool little concept. Like somebody might see the Outlands as bright and colorful, another person might see it as like dark and full of lava and fire and stuff like that. And then, next day they wake up and it's totally fine. It's kind of unexplainable. It's this very sort of intangible location where your characters are expected to patrol around this infinitely long plane where there is no fixed destination between locations. It's basically whenever you get there. It's definitely a place. I'll tell you that. Many different domains of gods exist within the Outlands. I believe the gnomish god of creation, Gond, I think he has a town in Outlands. It's Breezeholm. Oh, no, it's not Breezeholm. I think it's from like Skyrim or something. It's Wonderhome. I just looked that up real quick. Wonderhome. I was close. They've also got all sorts of things in the Outlands. But the real big, huge part of Outlands are the gate towns. And the gate towns are, I don't want to name a number. I have not counted them, but there's at least 9 of them. There's like 12 different gate towns, and they all go around the exterior of the Outlands in a sort of circle. And I know I just said that they're infinitely large plane. It's an infinitely large plane, but these are at the edge of the Outlands. You arrive to them, and they are basically the end points of the Outlands and the beginning points, these sort of portals into these different respective planes that the Outlands serves as an anchor to. Because remember, the Outlands is one of the only places in the entire multiverse in D&D where you can get to every single plane through a different portal in the Outlands. In Sigil, obviously, very much a similar place, but it's kind of a luck of the draw sort of thing in Sigil. In Outlands, each town has its very own portal, and you know exactly where you're going to. Like the town of Automata, that is obviously for Mechanus. And sort of it's a very kind of neutral sort of law-abiding town. Now, one thing about these gate towns is they cannot be too similar to the plane that they are connected to. Otherwise, they run the risk of their gate town being sucked into the home plane, to say, basically, which means, take Automata. If they follow everything to a T and do what in Mechanus, basically what Mechanus is, they run that very risk of just being a part of Mechanus. So they've got to introduce a little bit of chaos. So maybe, I don't know, the clocks are a bit off, or you might occasionally have an attendant come out and, I don't know, insult or berate somebody just to keep everything in line and to keep everybody out of Mechanus. I don't know. Super cool ideas like that. And then you've got so many different towns. Just to list them off, there's Automata, Fortitude, Excelsior, Tradegate, Ecstasy, Faunal, Sylvania, Glorium, Zeus, Bedlam, Plaguemort, Cursed, Hopeless, Torch, Ribcage, Regis. Yeah, you get the idea. And then obviously there is the centerpiece, the spire of which Sigil sits at the very top. Man, I've hardly been talking about Turn of the Fortune's Wheel. But that is because all of that stuff I just talked about is basically Turn of Fortune's Wheel. The whole gist of Turn of Fortune's Wheel is this goose chase sends you not to every town. I forget which specific ones they take you to, but it might as well be every town in the Outlands. They don't actually take you into any of the planes, just the gate towns. Which obviously they also do offer a whole bunch of different options in the campaign book, like kind of ideas of what might be on the other side of these gates, but they don't provide any maps or really anything that necessarily tells us, hey, if you want to continue the campaign in this direction, here's what happens. No, that's all left to DM discretion. This campaign is primarily Sigil and, primarily Outlands based. So your players will be spending a lot of time in the Outlands. All sorts of stuff happens. There's time dragons. One particular event has them meet this really old dragon, who already recognizes them and talks to them like they're friends. And then later on, as the campaign progresses, they meet younger and younger incarnations of this time dragon because, he's traveling through time and stuff until eventually they help him hatch or something like that. It's really cool. It's really cool, and honestly, I would definitely, if I do run something in the Outlands, I'll probably use a bit of Turn of Fortune's Wheel, and that will definitely be something I use because it's really good. There's also references to some of the older campaigns, I think it was Cursed. There's a chance where some of the characters from Descent into Avernus come out of the sort of portal, and they're Death Knights, and you can fight them, and it's cool. Stuff like that. But basically, Turn of Fortune's Wheel ends with you going back to Sigil with your newfound information and discovering that there's this manipulation of the Great Modron March happening, which is this huge lore implication thing. Every 200 years, the Modrons march across the plains to basically log everything, and they bring it back to the Primus, who's the head of Mechanus and the head of law and order, and they rewrite the universe to make everything sort of neutral again. So the Great Modron March is super important, and if you manipulate that, you can technically manipulate the universe in particular ways, because the Modrons will log everything they see, no matter what. and the Primus. You get the idea. So that's kind of a huge part of Sigil is this Modron March. And Shemeshka has got her own sort of plans going on with that. But you go and you stop her at her big cool casino in Sigil. It's a really cool map if you have the opportunity to go look at it. I don't know where you could find it, but good luck. It's really just a fun little campaign that has to do. It's basically just a tour, honestly, of the Outlands and Sigil. It's nothing exactly too deep, I don't think. I think the implications of all the planar stuff is really cool. The last boss is like the god of beholders or something. It's really neat. It's really cool. Probably still, I wouldn't say an amazing campaign. I haven't heard a ton of great things about it, not like Curse of Strahd or Tomb of Annihilation or stuff like that. Turn of Fortune's Wheel seems to be one of those campaigns that people are like, oh yeah, that one existed. That was cool to return to Sigil for 5e at the end of its lifetime. But yeah, for me personally, Turn of Fortune's Wheel, a solid 7 out of 10. I would like to definitely run this one in its entirety, or if I ever do run something in Sigil that isn't Turn of Fortune's Wheel, I will probably use at least the introduction of Turn of Fortune's Wheel and quite a lot of the random events and other things that can happen, because they really do a good job of fleshing out kind of how all that stuff works. And they also have like a walking castle encounter, and there's just so much more really cool stuff in Outlands, in Turn of Fortune's Wheel, that I think is useful for DMs going into the Outlands or Sigil, even if they aren't planning on using those plot points. Yeah, so going in now, we're going to talk about our Monster of the Week today. So today's Monster of the Week is a green slime. Green slime is a classic, not only in 5e, but also in just generally Dungeons & Dragons in general. And I guess this one isn't necessarily a monster. I should clarify. This one's not necessarily a monster. It's not exactly something you fight. But it is, of course, a hazard nonetheless, and it is one of the most famous hazards in Dungeons & Dragons. And also, we do have slime monsters like normally, so I guess you could consider this a type of slime monster. It doesn't necessarily attack people, but it is still extremely dangerous nonetheless. So we'll talk about what green slime does in 5e, and then we'll briefly talk about what it does in the first edition, so you can kind of see the difference. Green slime in 5e and in D&D in general is a trap of sorts. You stick it to surfaces, it sort of like melds down the surface and creates like a kind of like a curtain, like a green slime little waterfall. And if you touch it, it clings and it's acidic and it's sticky, and it can really do some damage if low level parties. It's pretty rough. If it is on the ceiling, and this is where I'm saying it's a monster, it can detect movement and drop onto people from the ceiling. So it does still have a bit of sentience. That is technically an attack. But if you dodge the slime, that's great. If not, guess what? You're taking 1d10 acid damage every turn you're in contact with it. So that's pretty rough. I mean, that's a maximum of 10 damage, but it's an average of 5, which, for a low-level player, like level 1 or 2, 3, might be pretty rough. And then you need to use an action to remove or destroy the slime. And obviously, if you're unable to remove it, it's going to keep doing damage. It deals double damage to non-magical wood and metal. So it is very caustic. It can melt through things pretty easily, which honestly, an enterprising party might have a vial of green slime that they can use to melt locks and other things. That's just an idea. Just saying. Last thing, green slime is vulnerable to and will be destroyed by fire, cold, radiant damage, sunlight, or any disease-curing magic. So really, This is a low-level hazard, no biggie, no deal. In 5e. In first edition, Green Slime was different. Green Slime was a little different. So in first edition, I don't know what Gary Gygax was smoking. First edition was just a time and a half. Honestly, I have a feeling a lot of people look at first edition the same way, war veterans look at Vietnam. Like, oh God. Yeah, so Green Slime in first edition, if your character, like if their skin, I think it might have just been if anything came in contact with Green Slime, your character would instantly dissolve and melt into Green Slime. It'd be instant death. Yeah, so you'd have to find a way to get around the Green Slime. However, whatever the Green Slime touches turns into Green Slime. So, you'd have to find this, like, maybe a magical barrier or something, or I don't know, but you'd have to find some way around it, but you cannot touch the Green Slime whatsoever in first edition. Otherwise, you will be slimed, and not in the cool Nickelodeon way, in the very literal way. Yeah, just watch out for Green Slime in first edition. If you're in fifth edition, whatever. Run right through it. You'll be fine, as long as you're like a little high level. But first edition, just don't even get close to it. Don't even try. All right, anyways, that's Green Slime. Thank you so much for sticking with it and listening to it this episode. This is our 30th episode of the podcast. I'm getting through it. I'm super excited for next week. I've talked to a couple of my players, and one of them is really interested in coming on to guest for Cyberpunk stuff. So hopefully we'll have him on next week. And as for now, thank you so much for listening. This has been Dungeons and Dystopias. My name is Tyler Hapney, and I'll see you next week.